Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Melanie Tana, and I love to talk about stories of all different kinds and all different forms. Lately, I've been, I guess for the past almost 2 years now, engrossed in the world of the Wheel of Time. I have been reviewing, sort of like summarizing and talking about my thoughts of the books, starting around book 8 or 9, I think. And I just want to keep that going. I'm on book 13. We're doing a part 2 today. I will be going over chapter 16 through chapter 35. So let's just jump into chapter 16. Perrin is trying to organize a formal parley with the White Cloaks, who just want to fight him because they think he's a dark friend and that he killed their men, and he did kill their men, but we'll get to that later. Fael is talking with the quartermaster about his management of the tasks and supplies, and she's really good at handling just overall organization of a large group of people. The training from her mom especially shines through, especially considering that the camp is growing in size no matter how much Perrin doesn't want it to. She and Perrin end up talking, and she's encouraging him in his leadership, and he's always a little bit discouraged and a little bit doubting of himself, even though he can't quite deny that he's really becoming a leader and that these people rely on him. And she organizes a sort of mix of a Two Rivers version, I guess, of a Saldean tradition. It's called Shanahar. I don't know exactly how it's pronounced, but it's basically when a married couple celebrates their, making it through their first year of marriage without being killed by Trollocs, which is an impressive feat considering all that they've been through. It's crazy to think that, they got married in book 4 and now they're here. But they basically lay out a picnic and talk, and Perrin opens up to her about his wolf side and how scared he is of human and wolf merging and wolf taking over. And Fael kind of opens up mostly about her time being imprisoned, though she doesn't get in full detail because, as Perrin understands, she keeps her secrets, but it's still very open for them and they feel very connected, which is good for them, especially after she was kidnapped for so long. In chapter 17, we open with Mat. He's been using the dice each night to decide where he's going to sleep so he can sort of avoid the golem. He parts with various members of the camp, and then he encourages some former Soldam to practice channeling, because the truth that Soldam can channel, being the slavers of channelers, can kind of open up the Shan-Chant, the error of their ways, which slavery is an error no matter what, but it definitely goes against how they decide that slavery is okay, and it doesn't quite work in their favor that the Soldam can channel as well as the Damani, and the only reason the Soldam can be slavers and Soldam is because they can channel, so he's encouraging them to challenge that. And then he gives Jolene, with whom he does not get along, some sweet buns that he later tells Tom will turn her mouth blue for, I think, 2 weeks. It's very funny. Later in the chapter, Elaine is on a walk, stressing Birgitte out with how exposed she is. But she ends up talking with the kinswomen, Sumeko and Elise, about using their channeling for gateways. In chapter 18, Perrin uses the wolf dream to scout the White Cloak camp. Hopper trains him to not be knocked out of the dream. And they end up coming across a violet dome that Hopper says is wrong and dangerous. It just has a sense of wrongness about it. POV in chapter 18 switches over to, I said Ituralde? Yeah, Ituralde. I'm going to say his name that way. Rodor Ituralde. He's fighting to maintain the fort of Meridon against the Trollocs. The Trollocs are using Trolloc bodies in trebuchets to attack, but then they discover that some Drakkar managed to hide among the bodies to attack, but Ituralde holds fast to Rand's promise that, they will be delivered and they will be helped. And then at the end of the chapter, Fael confronts Berlain regarding the rumors that Berlain and Perrin slept together the night that Fael disappeared. Berlain has not helped those rumors, even if she didn't start them, but the men of the Two Rivers, they're weird about it, which, it's their fault. It's not Berlain's, but she does not help. She kind of thrives off of the scandal. Fael proposes a fight to the death, kind of baiting Berlain into, making a different deal. And Berlain says that she will just leave the camp, but Fael says that's not going to dispel the rumors. And so they both determine that they need to appear as friends in order to convince everyone that the rumors are false, and also that Berlain needs to find a new man so that no one thinks that she has, anything going on with Perrin. In chapter 19, Mat goes to visit Elain with Tom and others. He hears rumors about himself. Some are close to the truth, some are far from it. And then Elain and Mat basically haggle over the use of the Bellfounder weapons and Mat's mercenaries and the Foxhead medallion. Mat is serious about fighting with Rand in the end, though. That seems to be what everyone's true goal is to be there at Tarmangard and whatever that seems to look like for them. Chapter 20 was very cool, and, it's a Nynaeve chapter, so of course it was. But she is to do the Aes Sedai test. And at this test, all the testers, the people who create the test for the specific person to be raised as Aes Sedai, they make the test for her specifically, and they're all sitters of the hall, which is rare, that they're all such important Aes Sedai. And I think a lot of them have a problem with Nynaeve, especially given how powerful she is, but how, she's just set off into the world. They perform the weave that will allow her to remember her task, if vaguely, but she'll remember. So when she passes through basically this veil of, forgetting her normal life, she will hold on to the fact that she needs to perform, is it the 100? Yeah. That she needs to perform the required 100 weaves as she goes through each experience. When she walks in, she can't remember why she's undressed, why she's there. She just has a vague understanding about the task at hand. Some ways that she's challenged is that she has to abandon sick children, basically just abandoning people who need help, despite the fact that she could help them, and remembering vaguely that she has the weaves to do, but it feels so real to her. They did a similar thing in the show with her accepted testing, and that was pretty intense. I'm interested to see how, if they get to this point with the Amazon show, if they will be able to make this different, but still cool, if not better, especially because at some point she has to face the fact that the Two Rivers is being attacked, and she decides to help defend them, but ends up having to leave them. And then her final experience is being with Lan, and he's in danger, and she tells him, we have to get out, and they try to run away. And she exits this world just in tears, just sobbing because of everything she went through. Even though it was fake, it felt very real to her. And being asked to abandon innocent people is very, very hard for her because of her natural inclination, just as a good person, a good yellow Aes Sedai, because, that's who she is. And more than anything, a good wisdom. She wants to help people, and so that's being challenged. When she exits, Saren is upset, one of the sitters, by the difficulty of the tasks. Another Aes Sedai claims she failed because she lacked decorum, because she got upset, basically, because she cared. And this is what Rand warned her about, to not lose, your fire, your intensity, your motivation. Nynaeve decides she would choose Lan over being Aes Sedai any day. They decide, yep, you're good, you're an Aes Sedai. She leaves, and she travels to Myrelle, who currently has Lan's bond, and she demands that it be passed on to Nynaeve. Nynaeve receives the bond and can feel that Lan is alive. And it's finally. He's her warder, finally. It was a very, very intense chapter, and we love Nynaeve, right? Perrin receives reports about Eredamon and Elain to take the Sun Throne, but he struggles to focus because of the dome / violet wall in the Wolf Dream. Morghese, who's serving under the guise of being a maidservant, drops the tray when she learns that one of the Forsaken was Lord Gaebril, who was in her court and controlling her. And it probably all starts to make sense that, she went through that, and why she was so obsessed with him, and what exactly happened when she was last Queen of Caemlyn. And then Perrin decides, we're gonna have to fight the White Cloaks. POV switches over to Ituralde. He plans to move behind Myrddin in retreat. Lydrin falls in battle. He goes mad and attacks, leaving an opening in their defenses against the Trollocs. And then Ituralde's horse dies and falls. Ituralde breaks his leg, and he almost dies as Myrddraal approaches him when the Saldeans join in the fight. So Yoli of Myrddin took a big risk, he kind of mentions, in letting Ituralde and his men into the city, but he couldn't just, stand by and watch this continue to happen. So they get the men into the city. And then it switches back to the POV at Perrin's camp, where Morghese thinks on those who have manipulated her, and then Talon Vor comes to say, hey, I'm leaving. This obviously isn't what you want. I get it, I'm sorry. Peace out, I love you, but it's not working. And then she informs him of Gabriel and his true identity and asks Tulliver to stay a little longer while she sorts through her feelings. In chapter 22, Gawain is restless when he's not able to guard Egwene. He runs into the younglings who are unsure of being warders, and then he speaks with Gareth Bryn, who tells Gawain to figure himself out without Egwene. Gawain dodges an assassin's knife, fighting them off with a sword until the assassin retreats, but because he was kind of interrupting Egwene's trap, to capture the assassin, she's pissed at him. Later POV has Mat meeting with Tom and Noel to discuss the rescue of Moiraine from the Genji, using clues from a rhyme. Mat defends himself from a robber, who sort of baited him by pretending to be robbed, and then looking through the man's things discovers that there's a picture of him. Later at the palace gates, Brigitte finds Mat and goes to a tavern with him to discuss the Finn and how to defeat them, mentioning that she and Gaidal got lost in their realm for 2 months before dying, and they rush off to Elaine when Brigitte senses pain through her warder bond. Chapter 23 has Elaine thinking on how to duplicate the medallion while meeting with Elorien Tremaine. She disguises herself later so she can go interview the Dark Friends, who won't say anything, but she makes herself appear as, their superior. They are kind of opening up to her, one of them is, and she finds out that they're hunting Mat when other Black Ajah attack. In the altercation with weaves and use of the medallion, Elaine breaks her shoulder. She's stabbed, someone takes the medallion from her, and then they heal Elaine so that they can use her. But by a trick of the medallion and more altercations, Elaine manages to burn Kesmal, and then Jack kills Eldrith and escapes. Later in the chapter, Gawain gets a scolding from Egwene for interrupting her plans, and then he takes a gateway to Camelin. The chapter closes with Lan's group going from 5 people to 12 people, despite his attempt at secrecy. In chapter 24, Elaine is assigned some bed rest after everything. Later at Maraudon, Yoli is talking to Ideralta, saying that Maraudon had been evacuated, but in the process he had to kill his fellow Saldaeans, and he thinks he deserves execution because he attacked his own people, even if he was thinking it was for a good cause. So he went against orders, basically. Later, Perrin is practicing in the Wolf Dream and gets in a fight with Slayer. And then he talks to Elias at the end of the chapter about finding a balance between wolf and human, finding comfort in the fact that Elias has managed to find that balance. In chapter 25, Wall and Bandar Eben, however you say that, Min has a viewing of Rand involving sunlight and a white sword, as well as viewings of the people around them. Rand starts to try and help organize the people again, to make up for him abandoning them. And then a Taveran miracle occurs when unopened sacks of grain on a ship are somehow not spoiled like the rest of them were. So he's starting to have a positive effect on the world around him. In chapter 26, the Ashaman inform Perrin that they still cannot create gateways, and then Perrin orders some warning shots at the White Cloaks to encourage a parley, which they give them, realizing that they have channelers on Perrin's side. During this meeting, Morghese sees Galad and they embrace. So Morghese has to admit, basically, that she is the Queen of Andor, or was, and not just some maidservant. She agrees to judge the trial of Perrin in 5 days, and on that day, Perrin will get his people back. In chapter 27, Egwene is trying to get armies to stand against Rand. She's making communications with various peoples, and then she meets with the Sitters, who are kind of having a secret meeting, and not everyone's present, and she's disappointed in them, but they find a way to give Egwene total power in times of war, but then she has total power in dealing with Rand. And then she basically, tells the Sitters, don't have any more secret meetings, have everyone present, and definitely tell me, otherwise the tower will be divided again. In chapter 28, in the Wolf Dream, Perrin is trying to deal with the Dome and Slayer, but he can't handle either and has to escape. At the end of the chapter, Itralda and his men need to stand strong just to wait for help to come. They bait and attack the Trollocs to kind of scare the Trollocs from pushing too much, because they will be attacked. In chapter 29, Berlain and Fael are doing their fake friendship thing, while Berlain is commenting on how attractive Galad is, which of course they're both the hot ones of the books, and they are interested in each other. It's funny. Makes sense. And then a bubble of evil appears, making everyone's weapons just kind of come to life and fight them and attack them. But dirt makes them lifeless again. When Fael's knife goes into the dirt, it just falls lifeless. Morghese meets with Galad trying to convince him that Perrin is a good man, and also tries to help him see that not everything is so black or white. And then Tam meets with Perrin and asks to leave and help Rand. Assuming this is part of the weird time difference where in Perrin's timeline, Rand has not gone to Dragon Mountain yet. I'm a little bit iffy on that. If you guys want to help me understand, I'm happy to read the comments, but that's kind of my understanding. It's interesting and noted later that during the Bubble of Evil, Perrin's hammer did not attack him, so somehow it was not included in the Bubble of Evil. And then at the end of the chapter, Elaine observes the use of Eludra's dragon weapon. So Eludra is basically like makes fireworks, but is also making this dragon weapon using the Bell Founders that Mat requested. In chapter 30, File has sort of set up for Perrin to be protected at the trial. Of course, Perrin figures this out later because he's like, I know my wife, but she does it secretly. And then Perrin's practicing using nightmares while dreaming to have something to use against Slayer. And by way of going through the wolf dream, Perrin ends up at Dragonmount with the other wolves, observing Rand's moment on Dragonmount, and he howls as young Bull with the wolves there when the light appears and Rand is sort of changed. Which makes sense with the timeline difference, like Tam just left and then this happens. I'm pretty much caught up with it, I just want to make sure I'm not wrong. In chapter 31, very good chapter, after fighting off groups of assassins on his way from leaving tavern and some gambling that Mat, of course, has been doing, he faces off the golem with the support of the band. He uses his Ashendari and the extra medallions made by Elaine, and manages to fight and burn the creature, pushing him back until he can kind of push the golem into this endless void. It turns out to be a gateway that created by Sumeko, but there's a really awesome moment where Mat sort of declares in like revenge and in honor of the people that the golem has killed. It's so powerful, and he does it in the old tongue, which is very, very cool for Mat, very, very in character for Mat's experience, and the golem falls into the endless void. And Sumeko mentions that it seems like the golem could sense them channeling the gateway, but it seems to have worked out. Turns out the plan was Elaine and the company's just all-together plan, whereas Mat's plan was to shove one of the medallions down the golem's throat. So it works a lot better here. In chapter 32, Aitralda has lost many men and they barely stand once Rand finally arrives. Rand destroys the oncoming Trolloc army with fire and death gates and various very powerful moves. There's a brief moment where we see Min studying at the stone. She's still looking through stuff about Kalimdor. And then Rand returns to Min and reunites the King of Erdemon with Aitralda, sort of finding solace in the fact that the king had not been killed by Rand's balefire in a previous event. Finally, for Aitralda, he can probably sleep for days now. Chapter 33 is called A Good Soup, which I just thought was funny, and when I saw it there, I sent like Snapchats to my friends because I just thought it was silly. But yeah, Good Soup, Adam Driver meme. If you don't know it, that's what I'm referencing, that's why I think it's funny. But it really is a good soup, because Siuan is sitting with Egwene and Nynaeve, remarking on the fact that the soup actually tastes good, that food is starting to have flavor and it's not rotted, mainly because of Rand's positive ta'veren effect on food and crops. But these three Aes Sedai are meeting, sort of figuring out how to capture the Black Aja in Tel'aran'rhiod. Later we watch Gawyn talk with his sister Elaine, also the Queen of Andor, about his struggles, and he finally lets go of his hatred and jealousy for Rand. And he talks with the ex-Soldam, Kaisier, I'm going to say Kaisier, who believes she should be Damani because she can channel, even though all Soldam can channel, and she's kind of a rogue one. They're a little nervous about her. But he shows her the assassin's knife from the tower, and she explains what a blood knife is, that it's both the assassins, they are called blood knives, and the weapon itself is a blood knife. And Gawyn realizes the only reason he survived the attack from this blood knife is because Egwene was the true target. He sends word to her, but he does not return to the tower because he's still holding a grudge against her, because if anyone is Ken, that's Gawyn. He's just Gawyn. And Egwene is everything. In chapter 34, Perrin realizes that Slayer's Dome in the Wolf Dream is what's keeping them from channeling the gateways. But they're approaching the trial, and Perrin obviously has a lot on his mind. File's worried about the trial and its results, but Gaul mentions he's proud of Perrin for meeting his toe, and then the trial begins. Galad accusing Perrin of the murder of Lathan and Yamwick, Perrin explains his relationship with the wolves and his newness to the world. This was back in book 1 when he killed these 2 men in defense of the wolves and also not really having full control of himself. Bornald challenges Perrin for the death of his father, but that was the Seanchan, and they sort of come to an understanding there, and Bornald is like caught by this and like surprised and realizing that he might be wrong. But in the end, Judge Morgase, ex-Queen of Andor, says that Perrin is guilty for killing in retribution, despite the fact that it was for the animals who are more than just his friends to him. Killing retribution is not okay. That being said, there is a sort of allowance here because the White Cloaks are considered a mercenary group and not a formal Andoran policing group. Because of this, it is not considered murder but an unlawful killing, which there is a difference. And because the murder was of White Cloaks and Galad is now in charge of the White Cloaks, Morgase passes the punishment on to Galad and says that the punishment doesn't have to be execution like the punishment for murder would be. Perrin promises to Galad to submit to his punishment after Tarmon guided. He needs that. He needs to stand my Rand. He says afterward, whatever happens, I will submit to it, I promise. But this is more important. We have to protect the world. And then Galad agrees, but he does not say what the punishment is. It was a very cool ending to that chapter. And then in chapter 35, Egwene prepares to get Missana in Teleran Riod. She's got a plan to trap her. Later, Perrin tells Fael about his plans to defeat Slayer, whom he believes to be Lord Luke, and then we see Galad thinking over what the right thing is, and that maybe his mother might be correct about the grayness of morality. In the end of this chapter, the Pack and Perrin attack Slayer in the Wolf Dream and manipulate the world around them to deal with him. Oak Dancer unfortunately dies in this altercation. She's stabbed by Slayer. And then Perrin continues to pursue Slayer and then returns to move and hopefully destroy the dream spike that is causing all the problems with the dome and the channeling of the gateways. So that's where that chapter ends off. I've read a little bit more there, so we will get into that later. But as far as my notes and my summary, I'm really liking The Wheel of Time again. I know this is kind of just a summary, but it's nice to go over it and talk about it with you guys. And I would love to know your favorite scenes out of what I talked about today, favorite moments, favorite character bits and pieces, anything I missed or any cool tidbits you think I would like to know. Y'all are the best, and I wish you a happy whatever kind of day you're having. You are all amazing, and we can all do this, and I will see you next time with another video.